Saturday, November 11th is the date. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Figure Four Podcast. My name is Doug. In Canada here today, September 11th, it is Remembrance Day. We should all give just a moment. Give thanks to all those brave men and women paid the ultimate sacrifice so we could have our freedoms. Very important thing today. On this show, Donald and I today are going to be going down either a top 5 list or a top 10 list of our greatest matches, in our opinion, that ever went down in professional wrestling history. It's going to be a great show. Hope you guys enjoy this. Let's get to it. So, I'm going to let you start. We're going to go top 5. And we've got some honorable mentions in here too. So, I'll let you go first. You start at number 5. Who do you got for your top 5 match of all time?
Okay, so when I was putting this together, the matches that I jotted down, I couldn't put them 5 or 1. Like I couldn't list them there. So they're like in my eyes, they're all. I mean, they're all number 1 to me.
Gotcha.
But I just basically picked 5 of them. So if you want to go, I'm again at number 5. Steamboat and Macho at WrestleMania 3.
Okay.
They always say that the IC title was the working man's title.
Totally.
And that match delivered. That match delivered on so many pages. Macho was putting Steamboat over, at least in the WWE, in my eyes. The fact that he went through and he had like a legal pad and wrote down, this is move 101, move 102, bro. Like just that.
He would call him in the middle of the night and ask him, Steamboat, move 206. What is it? Steamboat to this day can still ramble off each move.
No doubt. And I mean, that just tells you what kind of a professional that Macho was that like if he's dropping the title to Steamboat, he wants to look good in doing it.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't good. There wasn't going to be a botch here or there. The match delivers on so many. It's a good wrestling match.
Absolutely. Entertaining,
you had some
fast pace.
Absolutely. High flying. You had some mat stuff, good grappling. Overall, that to me, it's one of the best matches. And I think that match defined what it meant to be the IC champion.
I think that was the start of it. It may be a little bit before because he didn't have the belt very long, but Santana was a good IC champion as well.
Yeah.
Before Macho Man. But Macho Man took it to a whole nother level. And I think Steamboat, if he had stuck around a little while longer, I think Steamboat would have had a pretty good run as IC champion as well.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he was gone. Dropped the belt after whatever it was, a month and a half or something to Honky Tonk Man. And then WrestleMania 4, he was done.
Yep.
So, I think he could have did a good job too, but absolutely. That was always the working man's title and Macho Man started it.
Yep.
All right. My number 5, I've got Bret Hart and Steve Austin from WrestleMania 3. This match solidified kind of the fans, like Bret Hart was making Steve Austin that night. Steve Austin was a made man, and it solidified the fans loving him no matter what. I mean, they loved him anyway, but he wasn't Stone Cold Steve Austin yet. He became Stone Cold Steve Austin that night when he passed out in a pool of his own blood. And then Bret Hart just started kicking the crap out of him while he was down. That made Steve Austin that night. And the match itself was actually pretty good. That was back when Austin, like he hadn't been dropped on his head yet. He had no neck problems, no extremity problems. So he could still actually wrestle. And it was, but we've talked about this in other shows. It was awesome because it's the first time that a heel and a babyface kind of switched spots in the exact same match.
I don't think that's ever happened before.
I've never seen it happen. Like you've had baby faces and baby faces, but they always hug and kiss after it's all over. They never, like one never turns back on the other type thing. in a match. It's always like a handshake, kiss me, oh, I love you, you're so good, whatever. But yeah, it was the best double turn. The match was good, and it told a great story. Like I said, it solidified Austin that you're going to have to kill this son of a bitch before he's going to give up. That's my number 5.
Absolutely. And I mean, the Austin era hadn't even taken off at that point. Like that was just the start.
That was the start. The Austin era hadn't taken off until the next year when he won the
Yeah.
title.
That's a good pick. That's a good pick. My number 4, I guess. Michaels versus Brett in the Iron Man match. WCW was red hot at the time. WWE, WWF, whatever you want to refer to them as, they needed to do something. They needed to have a match that was going to get people to pay attention.
Yes,
because they were losing fans. They were losing. I mean, it was a sold out crowd at I think that was Mania.
That was at Mania.
Yeah, Anaheim, California. No, not Anaheim. No, that was Anaheim.
I believe it was Anaheim. Yeah.
So WCW's red hot. They're leading the ratings. They needed to get some kind of a match in, and we hadn't seen an Iron Man match, like a 60-minute match, since like the days of Flair and the NWA.
No, especially like there was always pinfalls when you did too. This one had no pinfalls.
They had none. They had to go to overtime. I thought it was a good grappling match.
There were a couple of high spots, but it wasn't crazy.
It wasn't crazy.
Like Sean doing Sean's like half a daiquiri twist or whatever the fuck, right? Like, but
right.
For the most part, it was fast pace. It was grappling, and it wasn't like a luchador style match because that's not Brett's style anyway.
No,
and it's not even really Shawn Michaels. It wasn't his style. Sean did a little bit of high flying, but not really. Yeah, it was a great wrestling match.
Yep,
with a really good pace.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it was move for move. I didn't find like during that entire match where I was like, okay, come on, like get on with this. Like let's someone pin somebody, like get a couple of pins in and let's just go on to the next match. I didn't get that feeling at all whatsoever during that match. And I like to think that maybe that was the beginning of the feud between Sean and Brett. Maybe I'm
absolutely planted the seeds. It was the beginning because when Gorilla Monsoon came down and said, we're going to have a winner, we're going to overtime, and Bret Hart was kind of like, why? And he gets in the ring, and then like a minute or two later, he takes a kick in the face, and he's done. But they had actually planned that out, where he just left the ring, and they wanted even the guys in the back to think that they absolutely hated each other. Little did he know that it actually was, like you said, it was planting seeds, starting this rivalry, because now they're both main eventers and they're both in direct competition.
Yep. So that was my number 4.
Well, I'm not going to go on much further because that was my number 4 as well. So
nice.
you pretty much nailed it. There's not much else to say about it. There was no real rest breaks in the match. A couple of headlocks or chin locks, but they weren't on the mat very long. It was go, 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 go. Great pace, great selling. They always had good chemistry, but you know what? I'll save it for later. But they always had good chemistry. The matches themselves, I mean, the selling was good. Shawn Michaels is the seller of all seller. Like,
oh my God,
him and Perfect were just, especially when if you grabbed them by the hair and put them head first into the turnbuckle, the two of them would kind of like jump off that bottom rope and just do the half attackery twist up in the air to kind of bounce themselves off. The selling was great. The moves were great. Yeah. I'm not going to go on any more about it. You pretty much nailed everything for number 4. So let's jump to your number 3.
Number 3 for me. I'm not much of a fan of these matches. There was only one before it, but this one came in at number 3 for me. Foley versus Taker, Hell in a Cell.
Oh.
I have never seen a human being take such a beating in the ring, concussed, completely out of it.
Teeth
separated
sticking out of faces.
teeth sticking out of faces, up in nostrils. He can poke his tongue through his bottom chin, like through his bottom lip. Has absolutely no idea where the hell he's at.
Separated shoulders.
Separated shoulder. Comes back to the ring. Gets back in the ring, and like the look on Taker's face is like, what the hell are you doing?
And the thing was, when Taker threw him off the top of that cell, that wasn't the worst fall. The worst fall was whenever he got planted through the cage and into the mat. That
And
was
the
the
chair,
one that fucked him up.
when he hit the mat, the chair came down and caught him in the face. That's what messed up his mouth.
Yeah.
I mean, Mick has gone on to say that, like, I'm not the most athletic, I'm not the most toned, I'm not the most, I don't go to the gym as much as the other wrestlers, but god damn it, man, he put on one hell of a show that night, and I mean, my hat's off to him.
I don't know how, like, I can still hear Jim Ross, for God's sake, will somebody stop the damn match? And it should have. Like, I mean, McMahon never stopped the show and someone died, yep. Like, so, but that match should have been stopped. I mean, it's no different than a hockey player or a football player that is in concussion protocol because they took a bad hit in the head. Of course, you want to go out there and keep going. I can do better. I can do more. But back then, I guess it wasn't, they obviously knew, but it was like they didn't care. And Mick Foley is kind of, he was always nuts and always wanted to give the fans like the best show they could ever get. And Hogan, it was either Hogan or Flair, or maybe both, said that Mick Foley he almost prostituted his body because he never had the greatest body. He never really had the art form of wrestling down. So he would just hurt himself. Like shock and awe type thing. And I'm not dissing Mick Foley. Jesus Christ. They don't call him a hardcore legend for nothing, but I don't know how he wrestled as long as he did. After that match alone, like he had some dangerous matches in WCW before he got to the WWF.
And Japan.
Oh my God. Japan.
Where the ropes were replaced with barbed wire. You had boards that had explosives on them. Yeah. And the thumbtacks. Oh my God! I
still remember him and Terry Funk are sitting side by side, and they're talking about it. He said, the fuck of it all is, he said, when you beat each other the way we've beat each other, you think you're going to hate each other, but the way you beat each other, and then the fans love it, and the more you beat each other, the more money you make, and the more you love the guy. Like crazy. That match was just, I'll never forget that. Like, now myself personally, I still think the first Hell in the Cell with Shawn Michaels and Taker was better. Just because it was the first and it had never been seen. But Mick Foley during that Hell in a Cell with Taker, I honest to God don't know. The lights were on, but nobody was home. He had to have been out of it for at least a day. There's got to be a day out of the next day out of his life that he doesn't remember.
Easy, at least a day. Now, I mean, like I've watched like interviews on YouTube with him, and like that match always comes up. What's the toughest match that you were ever involved in, and he's probably been involved in strap matches. I'm sure he has, maybe not televised, but of course the Hell in the Cell always comes up, and he's like, I think it was when he was thrown off the top of the cage and went through the table, that's when the concussion happened. He doesn't remember anything after that.
Oh my God.
He must have just been operating on just pure instinct at that point.
Well, how could you not?
Like,
I mean,
Jesus.
Truth be told, I've gone into work extremely hungover or maybe even somewhat buzzed up. And I'll do things, and 5 minutes later, it's like, fuck, what did I do with that? I didn't do this, and go back, and I actually did do it. Just autopilot. Like you say, it's instinct. Yeah. But that's a good number 3. That's a very good number 3.
Cool.
For my 3, I actually took Hogan and Andre.
Okay.
WrestleMania 3 World Championship. For its time, that was a big match feel because wrestling fans back around then still kind of had blinders on. Kayfabe was still around pretty good.
Yep.
It was, the blinders were just starting to come off a little bit, I think, but that was like WrestleMania 1 really wasn't that great. I didn't think so. I actually thought it was pretty boring with Hogan and T against Orndorff and Piper.
Yep.
WrestleMania 2 was way better. They didn't even need to take it from the three cities. Just the whole card was really good. Even right down to the Corporal Kirshner match with Nikolai Volkov. That whole good. And then the main event, of course, was Hogan and Bundy in a cage. But WrestleMania 3 was just, when you go back and you take a look at what it was, well, Andre hasn't been defeated in 15 years. He's never been pinned. WrestleMania 3 was the first big match feel. And like I said, there was still kayfabe and wrestling fans still had blinders on a little bit. Even Las Vegas was taking odds on Hogan and Andre at the time. So that'll tell you there. It set the stage for big matches for future WrestleManias. And don't forget, I mean, it set an indoor attendance record. 93,000, whatever it was, 173. It was bigger than the fucking Rolling Stones. That's a lot of damn people. For that time, that's unheard of. So, and then, of course, what also made it better was the lead up after that. There were a couple of return matches, and then eventually what happened on the main event when Hogan kind of got screwed and Andre finally took the title and DiBiase and all that stuff.
Right.
The aftermath was good as well as the build up to WrestleMania 3. Like, I remember as kids, it was like, I think Hogan's going to lose. Like, he's just too damn big, like, but yeah, that's my number 3, Hogan and Andre.
That's a good pick. That's a good pick. Going on to my number 2, Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon, the first ladder match at WrestleMania 10.
Oh, very nice.
I thought that was one of the greatest intercontinental matches that I've ever seen. And probably the only reason that I put that above Steamboat and Mach is just because it's that happened more recently, I guess, in my head. I mean, we're going on WrestleMania 40, and we're going back to WrestleMania 10 to talk about this.
Yeah.
What's interesting about that card is that was the first WrestleMania that Hulk Hogan was not a part of WrestleMania.
That's true.
That's the first time. Everything about that match. I mean, you had high flying stuff, guys jumping off the top rope, crashing into the ladders. Michaels on top, like on the top rope with the ladder, coming down on top of Razor with it. It was something that you hadn't seen before. Now, before that match, it was actually Brett that had pitched it to Vince about incorporating a ladder into a match because they had done it in Stampede.
Yeah, Brett was pretty upset over that.
He was pretty upset. He was salty. He was pretty salty over that. And Vince was like, "Oh, it'll never work. It'll never work, pal." And lo and behold, we have what ended up happening at WrestleMania 10. I thought it was a great match. The two belts hanging above the ring. Shawn had been suspended, and because of apparently it was a fake drug test or something like that, and he just never returned the belt.
Well, he had been suspended. I don't know if it was drugs or steroids or whatever it was, and they told him to send the belt back, and he said, "Fuck you."
Yep.
Like, I'm not doing it. So
I don't know whose belt it was, but there was one of the two belts that were hanging above the ring. It looked way better than the other one.
Well, it was a brand new one. That's why. The other one was pretty ring used at that point.
Right.
That match, I agree with you, man. Like the blows that they both took. Like there was
Yeah.
one, I almost threw up myself. There was one where Razor had picked up the ladder and he put it on the apron and he was ready to push it in. And Sean had just come off the side ropes and drop kicked the ladder right into Razor's guts. And as soon
Oh,
as that hit, I was like, okay, that was stiff. That hurt.
yep.
That hurt.
Yep.
Um, yeah, there were that was the first of our time.
Yep.
This match was actually in my honorable mentions. I did have, I think that's my number 9. I did have 10 matches. That was in my number 9 as an honorable. Yeah, that was incredible. And Sean being picked up like and basically body slammed off the ladder, like
Yep.
jumping off the top of the ladder. It was absolutely the first of its time. And the timing of those two, like they didn't practice that match. They called it in the ring. The
Yep.
timing of the two of them and the selling, it was, yeah, I can see why absolutely that would be in anyone's top 5.
Nice.
For my number 2, I'm going to go Flair and Sting. The very
Oh,
first
they've had
Clash
some
of
good ones.
Champions.
Oh man.
Very first Clash of Champions going head to head with WrestleMania. The very
Yep.
first WrestleMania. That match, they went to a 45-minute time limit draw. And that was the night that Ric Flair made Sting. Sting was a made guy after that match.
Yep.
Biggest match of his career at that point. Flair made Sting. He made Sting that night.
Mm-hmm.
The fans love Sting. I mean, the fans are going to make you. They make you or break you. That's just the way it is. If you're over, you're over. If you're not, you're not. But
Yep.
the Flair was so giving that night with Sting, with the selling and just giving him time. For me, that match will, and it was on TBS free. Like I said, they went head to head with WrestleMania. That's why I picked it at number 2 for a greenhorn and a veteran. Sting looked like he had wrestled for years. He listened well to Flair. He took direction well, and it paid off because Flair made him the man. That's my number 2.
That's a great pick, man. And they've had some great matches over the years.
They have
Amazing
absolutely.
matches.
But I think that one was no. It's just me personally. That's the best one, I think.
Right. No, I get it. I totally get it. And I can see that. So for my number 1, you've already touched on it. Austin versus Brett, WrestleMania 13. I can't really say anything more about that match. You already nailed it every point. We've already talked about it. Brett did and Austin is all like he's gone public and he's already said, Brett has done so many things for him to put him over as as a talent and eventually as a babyface. Austin, coming on the end of his career, well, even the middle and going on the end of his career, he was more of a brawler, not much of a mat wrestler, but that match was one of the best that I've ever seen.
Yep.
And you've already talked about it, so I'm not going to say much more about it.
Okay, well, I'll jump to my number 1, and it's kind of a homer move, but it is what it is. My number 1 was Savage and Steamboat, WrestleMania 3. We already talked about it. That match was the perfect match just because of the way Savage had it all laid out. And Hogan has gone on record and said the Randy Savage he knew back in the heyday made sure everything was perfect and impeccable and flawless. And that's just the way Savage was. I mean, even to the referee bumps with Earl Hebner going down. I honestly, at first, I was never a Georgie Animal Steel fan. Never. And when he first, like when Savage was going to that top rope with the ring bell again, and Animal kind of pushed him off, and then Steamboat small packaged him to win the title, I thought it kind of ruined the match a little bit. But I guess
Mhm.
I guess you have to understand that it made for it made for good storytelling, just
Mhm.
because Animal had to be there because he loved Elizabeth, hairy fuck, and then he he was in the corner, so of course he had to be involved in the match, especially if the referee is down and he's going to the top to hurt Steamboat with a bell again. So as I got older, I appreciated it. But yeah, that's my number one. Now,
Nice.
honorable mentions. Do you have any more to throw out?
I've got one. Now, we talked a little bit before the show, and I said that none of my matches actually had Hulk Hogan in them.
Yeah.
My honorable mention does have Hogan. It's Hogan versus Sheik, Madison Square Garden. Hogan wins the title. He takes the big green belt.
Yeah.
I think if it wasn't for that match happening, I don't think WWE was going to end up exploding into what it eventually ended up becoming.
I agree with you. Hogan took that ball and he ran with it. Hulkamania, no one had ever seen anything like that. It was, and honest to God, it was a phenomenon.
Yep.
Hulkamania was a phenomenon. And just like that, he just needed that world championship.
Yep.
And what a way to set it up. Like you look back at the 80s and in the US with all like the Russians, like the Cold War going on, and then the Iranians, and any foreigners coming in. Well, you're obviously evil. Like the Americans
Hmm.
just hated them, and you've got him, and he had just defeated the All-American Boy for the World Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Championship.
Hmm.
That I don't know how the roof stayed on Madison Square Garden that night
Hmm.
when Hogan dropped that leg and got three. That's, yeah, that definitely deserves an honorable mention. I didn't even think of that match. I'm going to throw one out. I've got a couple here. Now, this one, if we had done a top 10, I actually had it number 6. It was Saturday night's main event. 2 out of 3 falls. Demolition versus the Brainbusters for the tag team championship.
Oh.
That was another match that was almost flawless. Them two teams just had so much chemistry together because they all knew, well, except for Bill Eadie, Axe.
Right.
Barry Darsow was all Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard knew him from the NWA because he was a big Russian
Right.
before he went to the NWA. But the chemistry that those two teams had together were just, and I mean, the Buster Demolition couldn't be beat. And the Busters just sold like shit. Like they got the tar knocked out of them. Whenever they won the tag titles, they could barely walk. They sold so well, right?
Yep.
And it was just that whole match from the first fall to the third fall with Andre throwing the chair into Tully and Tully whacking Smash, and they walk out with the tag team championship. And it was the second title in the Heenan family because Rick Rude
That's right.
had the
Yep.
Intercontinental title. So everyone was like, well, he's going after Hogan now because Andre was still kind of there, but not really. But everyone was convinced that someone was going to take the title off of Hogan from the Heenan family. So, oh, by the way, shout out, Vince, write the fucking check. Put Demolition in the Hall of Fame. They deserve to be there.
Absolutely.
You put them in, and maybe people will forgive you for having the fucking New Day beat their record as the longest tag team champions of all time. That was a joke. Anyway, that's one honorable mention, and I got to throw. There's 2 more I'm going to throw out. AEW All In FTR versus the Bucks from this year.
Oh,
That was
yes.
one of the most insane frigging matches. I've never been a fan of false finishes. Like 1, 2, and a kick out. I've never been a fan of them. But coming on the end of that match for like 5 or 10 minutes, every move I thought the match was over.
Absolutely.
And they just kept going and they kept going. That's another match that was almost flawless. And talk about two teams that just have all the chemistry in the world. That's probably one of the greatest tag team matches I've ever seen
That was,
in my life.
we've talked about this on previous shows and even just through text. That was my favorite show. That was my favorite match from that show. Hands down.
That was
Absolutely.
absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. Now, the Bucks, I actually earned some respect for that night because I never cared for them before. But I've always loved FTR because they always reminded me of the Brainbusters, Anderson and Blanchard. But
right.
Yeah, that match blew my goddamn mind. I was like, oh my God, like literally on the edge of my seat. Literally the entire, and the timing was, and the selling, it was just, like I said, it was almost perfect. That was a wrestling match. If you want to go to a wrestling match to go on a roller coaster of emotion, that was the match to watch. It was absolutely friggin' incredible.
Yep.
And my last honorable mention was the 1992 Royal Rumble when Ric Flair won the WWF Championship.
Yes.
I have to give that because Flair went out for 60 minutes at 42 years old, did a whole bunch of Flair flops, powdered a little bit, but not too much. At 42, went out, and it was the first time, that the WWF title was ever presented to the winner of the Royal Rumble.
Yep.
Plus Hogan got screwed. That's well, I didn't like the ending with Justice, but it was it was a perfect story told. Justice would go on to win a couple of WWF titles after that anyway. But yeah, I had to throw the 92 Royal Rumble out. It wasn't as good as the 95 Royal Rumble. The 1995 Royal Rumble was the who's who of wrestling. Like, more than half of the people in that Royal Rumble, or at least half of them, have to be Hall of Famers. So, I mean, you had Bulldog, Shawn Michaels, go. It was, but the 92, I had to throw that in there just because if I didn't, it wouldn't be fair to Flair. And that, folks, was our top 5. We debated around the top 5, top 10. Made some lists, see where it was going to go. We still had fun. Pretty good show. Want to thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you very much for listening to the Figure Four Podcast. My name is Doug, and remember, November 11th, just take a minute. Thank a veteran. Thanks for tuning in, folks. We'll see you next time. I'm out.